Well, hello, wonderful people. Today I thought I'll have a little bit of a discussion of what it's like for a Windows user to move over to Linux. Now, I'm not talking about servers, I'm just talking about desktops. So in other words, let's say Windows 10 or Windows 7 moving over to some Linux desktop. It does really upset me when I watch some of these Linux YouTube videos, and people say, install Ubuntu or don't install Ubuntu Linux, and what they're referring to typically is the desktop version, which I agree with, but it's not the server version, which is a brilliant operating system, brilliant system to use. So the big difference between Windows and Linux is Windows is you basically, what you see is what you get initially. Okay, if you want Windows 10, you download it or buy it and put your key in, register, and you present it with your Windows interface. And for some people out there, you can go and fiddle and change a few things and make it look more like you want. You can change the desktop background and so forth, and everything you guys already know about how Windows works. But you can do all that in Linux as well. And in some cases, I'll say, especially versus Windows 10, it's much easier in Linux. And you have, maybe this is a bit of a downer for somebody moving over to Linux initially. You've got far more options to set up in Linux than in Windows. Now remember, when I say Linux, I'm referring to desktop versions. And with Windows, you basically have Explorer, which is, and I'm not talking about File Explorer, but the actual UI itself. I know at a stage they went over and they started calling it, what was it, Metro, saying their new UI. I can't remember what everything they called it. But you've got your Windows look, okay? And that's what you're stuck with. You can install some theme packages and so forth. Okay, but that's not part of Windows. So, okay, you got to go and install that separately and purchase them or whatever the case may be. Now, depending which desktop you choose in Linux, you can choose the look you want. So, in other words, don't have the Windows 10 look on Windows, but have Windows XP look on Windows 10, for instance, or a Windows 95 look, or a Macintosh look, OS X look. But running on Windows 10. You don't really have those options in Windows 10, but on Linux you do have those options. So if you don't like the look of a particular Linux desktop, well, get a different desktop or change it to the way you want it. Now, the one that you're looking at right now, what I'm showing you here, is the latest Linux Mint 19.3. It was released a few weeks ago, and this is basically what it looks like after a very basic little quick install. There's not much to the installation. We can maybe make a video. There's many videos about how to do that install all over the place. But this is the basic look of it. There's already some issues with it. You might want to change, for instance, the desktop background. Well, how would you do it in Windows? Well, the same. And like I say, this is the specific desktop we're using here is called Cinnamon, all right, which was, as far as I know, originally created by Mint, Linux Mint. And it's a fork of GNOME 3. Getting a little bit technical, but all right, just to give you some background there. Now, in Windows, you would go to the desktop and right mouse click. So we in Mint Cinnamon, and we right mouse click, okay? So what do you want to do? You want to change the desktop background? Go to change desktop background. And okay, we're running in a virtual machine here, so things are not super fast. And a couple of desktop backgrounds will pop up, and you can choose from different folders and so forth. You can go to your pictures folders, and you can go and choose whatever you want and change it to however you want it. So let's maybe choose something here. Without looking too far, let's just change it to let's say this one here. Okay, and there we go, the background has been changed. Okay, so there we have it, different background. Okay, a little bit dark maybe for the video, but okay, to show my point, strangely enough, it looks a lot like my real background, which you'll see in a moment. And then another thing that I, for instance, don't like is the size of the panel at the bottom here, which is the same as in Windows 10, your taskbar. Okay, and on the side here, you get your time and so forth. You can modify that and change the dates and how you want it and so forth. You've got your File Explorer, the same as in Windows. You can Control Shift E and it'll open up your File Explorer. and why is my machine slowing down now? Okay, okay, so there's your file explorer. Okay, you can have multiple tabs. You can have, some people like opening up different tabs and so forth. I don't. I'll just open a new instance of the file explorer and drag things around as I want. You can change the views how you want it to be, etc. You've got shortcuts on the side here which you can add to, which I've done on mine. And then, you know, the background here is very white. I don't like that. I like dark themes, which I'll show you that I've changed mine. But yeah, I mean, you've got File Explorer. For instance, Task Manager, you would go and normally right mouse click on the taskbar and go to Task Manager. Well, with Mint, it works slightly differently. So similar to Windows, on the left here, you have your Start button. Okay, you click on that, and that's what it looks like. Okay, it's sort of reminiscent of Windows 7, Windows 10 in a way, I suppose. But yeah, so what I want to see is the default equivalent of the Task Manager in Mint. So it is, we'll just type in MINI and System Monitor comes up. So you can just click on it now, but I would like this actually to be on my panel permanently. All right, so I'll right mouse click on that and add to panel. All right, and it'll appear at the bottom here. Okay, come on. I just got to quickly just take this out of full screen. Something's running in the background here very hard. Okay, and let's go back. Okay, so that's my actual desktop, as you can see. So, all right, so let's just get back to Mint 19.3. Okay, OBS is having some trouble here. But all right, so now we've added it to our panel. Okay, we click on it and the system monitor will open. And it'll tell you things like you would expect from a task manager in Windows. Okay, so in this case, virtual machine is running 4 cores, and memory, I think I gave it 3 gig or something. I'm currently using 30-something%, yeah, what, 27%. Cinnamon is a little bit heavy on resources compared to some other desktops out there, but it's really not that heavy if you consider how many gigs of RAM people do have nowadays. Oh yeah, and then you can go and look at your processes as well, and you can kill processes, etc. You've got different views of how to view those processes, etc. You can look at your file systems. Okay, so I've only got the 1 hard drive in this case, and yeah, but and there you got your task manager, for instance, and this is all from a dead stock standard install of Linux Mint 19.3. All right, so like I said, I don't like this panel, for instance. I want it a little bit smaller. So, you know, where would you think the setting would be? Well, go to the panel, right mouse click on it, and panel settings. All right, so we click on that, and it'll open up the panel settings for us in a moment. Okay, and yeah, the panel height, immediately drag it down to what you wanted. Let's say 22, for instance. Okay, you'll notice at the bottom here it's changed. All right, and we can close that down, and there's our new panel size. It comes with various utilities installed, like if we go to Office here, for instance. So this is our categories on the left here, and well, these are shortcuts very much on the left hand side here, which I'll show you outside of the virtual machine just now. But so if you go to Office, for instance, here you've got, for instance, your Microsoft Office equivalent in LibreOffice. Okay, you got LibreOffice Calc, for instance, which is like Excel. Writer is MS Word, and so forth. And so yeah, that's the default installation of, or the default look of Linux Mint 19.3 with ever slight changes. And yeah, so let's shut that down. I don't want that open anymore. And we'll do a shutdown of that. And we should be in my main desktop. Okay, busy shutting down still. All right, let's just do that. Let that run on that side, and we go to my main workspace. That's another thing that's been around with Linux desktops for many years, is that you can have multiple desktops or workspaces, or whatever the particular flavor wants to call it. So you know, in Mint here we have 4, for instance, so you can switch between your workspaces. You can even set it up so that it looks like that, and you can jump between your different workspaces as well. So if we okay, so this is my main workspace or desktop, and some people don't really find much use in multiple desktops. I find the more applications you're running at the same time, you find it's easier to sort things with multiple desktops. It's a little bit easier to use, but that's just my opinion. But it's quite nifty to use. Then you can, for instance, like in Windows Alt-Tab, you can jump between applications. So let's say, for instance, if I open Firefox up here, a website, and I want to open something else up. Normally it'll be, or not open something else, but switch to a different running application. In Windows you'd say Alt-Tab, all right? So in Linux also Alt-Tab, okay? And you choose which one you want, okay? And so let's say, for instance, there, that is LibreOffice, in specific LibreCalc. So this is the Excel equivalent. This is just a quick spreadsheet that I'm working on at the moment. It's just some results of a benchmark app I wrote, and you can put charts in and everything. It's the same as Excel. Compatibility wise with Excel, they do say LibreOffice is like 99% compatible with the latest Office and so forth. No, it's not. Okay, I've been using it for many years, OpenOffice as well, and they are not fully compatible. But if you're not really dealing with people that must have, for instance, an Excel spreadsheet mailed to them or whatever the case may be, or this is something you're doing for yourself, then there's no reason not to use Calc. It's totally free. Office is lots of money, whereas LibreOffice is completely free, and there's other options as well. You don't have to use LibreOffice, but the most popular one is currently LibreOffice. Well, for the last few years, and before that, OpenOffice. So that's the Excel equivalent. So let's shut that down. And did I click on that now? Yeah. All right. So then you got, for instance, your MS Word equivalent. All right, which is LibreOffice Writer. And this is just looking at a page of a document of mine, and I mean it's very much like Excel. You can like MS Word, you can select piece, and you can go to your toolbars up top here, and you can change things, and it's just a very standard Office application, Word let's say a document editing application, and again not 100% Word compatible, but good enough for most cases. But you always have the option, why do you actually, in many cases, why do you actually need to send someone an MS Word file, a docx file or a doc file? Why do you actually need to do that? You don't really have to, because that's assuming they have Office themselves, which they might not even have, or some viewer that can view it. But I mean, you can just stick to some standard that everyone uses, that's available on most operating systems, and make it a PDF file. All right. So if we look up top here, okay, this little icon here, it says export as PDF, or we can go to File. All right. We can say export as. We say export as PDF file, and then that will make it look the exact same on any computer that views this file. So you don't have to stick to a LibreOffice format or an OpenOffice format. You just export it as a PDF, or whatever you want it to be. So I mean, there you've got. So I mean, you can do some theme changing, desktop backgrounds and so forth in Mint Cinnamon, and well, all the desktop environments out there. And you've got your spreadsheet application, your document application, and this is all free so far that we've looked at. Well, everything's going to be free that we're looking at in Linux here. Okay, so let's close that, and let's not save that. All right, and so this is Firefox. I have multiple tabs at the moment. Sorry, that's the menu. Where are we? Yeah. So I've got quite a few tabs open. Yeah. And you can. It's a very standard. It's the exact same as what it'll be like on Windows. Whatever website you go to. I mean, if we go to YouTube, for instance. So let's just say in YouTube. All right, we go to YouTube, and it'll open up YouTube and show you all the YouTube videos, and you click on it and it'll run. It'll just work. Okay, same as in Windows. There's no difference. If you want to use Chrome, you can install Chrome. There's many Brave. If I like Brave as well. You can install that. Chromium itself, Waterfox, etc. You can install all that stuff on here, and they're all free. All right, so let's close YouTube down, and let's close our browser down. Okay, and so you'll like I said, okay, so I've got a couple of applications running here already. Something else that you might be interested in is, for instance, your email system. All right, now in the Windows world, I mean, if you're not doing online mail, then I mean, you need to install some client, and in Windows it's typically Outlook. But on Windows you can also have things like Thunderbird and so forth, which is what I predominantly happen to use. I use Thunderbird and Evolution. I find Evolution is a prettier interface, but there's certain reasons why I prefer Thunderbird, but they're all personal opinion, nothing specific about it. So that's Thunderbird that's opened up, and it's a free mailing system, and it works perfectly, and it's brilliant. You got your mails. You can, same as Windows, same as any operating system, to do attachments and whatever the case may be, and it's the exact same. There's no difference. All right, and then for instance, you might want to get into some graphics editing. You could think of, for instance, Photoshop, which is fairly expensive, and I have, well, okay, now on Linux you cannot run Photoshop. There are ways of running older versions through things like Wine and so forth, which I don't recommend, but there are ways of running some of these things. Alternatively, you can run it in a virtual machine, which we'll cover in a moment. But so the default one that's typically stuck on the Linux systems is GIMP. Now GIMP can also run on Windows, okay? Not can, does, and I've used it for a very long time. And so this, for instance, you might recognize that image. So if I go, for instance, to the website again, all right, so and we just go to the next image, all right. Sorry, I clicked too quick there. So well, all these images, so let it just scroll through. All this was done in GIMP, okay, and we'll just go one more quickly, okay, and one more. All right, so that image, okay, that's stuck up there, all right, is done in GIMP, and here it is, and here's all the layers like you'll have in Photoshop, all right, and you can move things around. So let's say C# here, I want to move around, okay, and I'll stick it wherever I want it to. I can put one layer above another layer, etc. Same as in Photoshop. But okay, this for most people, by far most people, all right, you'll never need anything more than GIMP, all right, for image manipulation, so forth, for touching up photos, for doing things like I'm showing you here now. GIMP is brilliant at it, especially the newer version now that, you know, it's got so many different colors, or more colors than previous versions. You know, it's like Photoshop. I think GIMP used to be 16.7 million colors, so 24-bit color in other words, and it's now, I think, also on so that's 3x8 is 16, it's 48-bit color. That's billions of colors. I mean, it's the same as Photoshop now, and that's one of the reasons why, one of the things that kept me from moving from GIMP, from Photoshop to GIMP, was the color support back then, but only for my my fine art photography stuff that I do. There I really found it's getting a little bit professional there now for a very specific requirement that I had, and Photoshop was the best tool for that. So people saying you don't need Photoshop, GIMP can do everything, that is not true, okay? It depends what you want to do, all right? And if you are a professional photographer that's, you know, you got to do some really fancy graphic stuff at a seriously high level, professional level, Photoshop is probably still the way to go. And then you can go and use it on your Mac or Windows. But yes, but GIMP for almost everyone out there, if you're talking percentages, I mean, it's in the very high 90s. You'll never need anything beyond GIMP. And like I said, it's free. It's easy to use. It is a bit of a learning curve. So if you move over from Photoshop, there are some things that will be familiar to you, and some things that are new. But it's like anything, you know, if you had to move over from GIMP to Photoshop, you can have the same argument. There's new things to learn. You know, you're moving from Windows 7 or from Windows XP to Windows 10. You've got a complete new set of things to learn. That's part of the movement from Windows to Linux, for instance. It's different, so you've got to learn new things. It's, you know, it's just one of those things you have to do. You can't expect Linux to be Windows or Windows to be a Mac. They are different systems that try and deliver similar features, but the way they go around by doing it is slightly different. And then in the Linux world, most of it is free, or almost all of it is free, but there are some paid for stuff, but typically you're not going to come across that. In Windows world, most things are paid for, but even there, it depends what you're doing. A lot of things are free. So that was a bit of a broad statement. Maybe I should apologize for that. That's not quite fair. And then, I mean, I do both server administration, Linux server administration, and I also do development for Linux and Windows. And when I do my Linux development, for instance, I actually have a Microsoft product running in Linux, which is Visual Studio Code. Now, you C# developers out there will know Visual Studio, obviously, from the Windows world. And Microsoft has released something called Visual Studio Code, which is completely free, which is multi-platform. And that website, this website, for instance, and many of the things that I'm writing, I do, for instance, Rust development and so forth as well. And that is all done in Visual Studio Code. And there are, I won't say millions, but there are so many plugins and extensions for Visual Studio Code. It just makes it so wonderful to use. It's not as full-featured as Visual Studio. Let's not pretend it is. Microsoft is not going to give away something they're making money off from, but it's so close for most situations that it really doesn't matter. It can do just about anything. I mean, like there, for instance, now we're looking at an Angular project that I'm working on. Then I've, for instance, got another one here, just as an example. Let's take, for instance, this is a Rust application that I wrote. So I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I'm jumping over from Angular, which is TypeScript and HTML, CSS, etc., JavaScript, and so forth. And I'm switching over to Rust, okay, a different language, but it's the exact same Visual Studio Code. So you can jump around. You got your tabs and everything up top here, and you can go to, you know, and you can go through your stuff. You can even debug and so forth. Everything, I mean, this is free. Now you could say, well, you've got Visual Studio Code that's Visual Studio Community now. I think it was Express always. That is free. That's true, and I do think that is also to do, for instance, C# development in. That is better than Visual Studio Code. All right. But better is that requires a separate video. What do you define as better? What is your use case? What do you actually need? And you know, it all comes down to that. So you can't just say, you know, it depends what you want. It's like saying, you know, GIMP is better than Photoshop. Well, it's better in the sense that it's free, yes, and it can do a lot of things that Photoshop can do. And if that's what you want to do, then yes, GIMP is obviously the better choice. But in a lot of cases, GIMP is not the better choice. So everything is a way up. You know, it's what do you actually want to do, and the chances are that you're going to get free stuff for that in Linux, for instance. And so yes, so that's a quick show of my development environment, for instance. And I mean, on here, for instance, now this you don't always need to do. You don't need to go to the command line as a general user of your operating system. If you want to mail, if you want to do browsing, you know, that type of stuff, you don't need to do anything of what I'm going to show further. You don't even care about the development stuff that I just showed you. You care about your operating system itself. It must look pretty, which you can go and do. You've got many choices that you've got, and it's all free. There's no payment for any of this. So like I say, for your day-to-day user, home user, for instance, you know, you're nothing, sorry, nothing against the older folk, but yes, your granny and your granddad can use this. You know, if they can use Windows, they can most definitely use this. And some of the desktop environments is even easier than this. So, you know, you just choose and you set things up the way you want. Like, for instance, when I showed you just now in Mint 19.3 in the virtual machine, it basically had, you know, the panel at the bottom here was a bit higher, and it had very few icons on the left here. I've got a whole lot more here, because those are the things I use constantly. But you know, to get to your start button, all right, you can click on it. We'll call it start button for Microsoft users' sake. But I mean, it's the same. You can press your Windows button on your keyboard and it'll open up. And if you remember sort of more or less what you're looking for, so let's say I want to open, for instance, Calc, okay, Excel, Office Calc. So I'll just say CAL, and there's a whole lot of things that's got CL in, and there's Calc, okay. And there you go. But like I say, so same as in Windows, you can add stuff to your taskbar. That means you, in my case, for instance, I seldomly actually end up going in here. Yeah. And okay, so we've covered the basics of just, you know, just what the general feel of is it like switching over from a Windows 10 machine, for instance, to Linux. But like I said, you know, the desktop is very much your choice. You can fiddle with it. Yeah, and change it as you want. For instance, you'll notice immediately, well, not from this particular image, but let's say, for instance, if I open up, well, the text editor, okay, so this is equivalent of Notepad, okay, in Cinnamon, Linux Mint Cinnamon, and it's dark, okay, it's not white, all right. That's a theme that I installed, all right, that the default would have been white, but I don't really like very light colors. My eyes don't like it very much. Even this blue on the bottom right corner here, it's a little bit bright for my eyes, but it's a pretty picture. So yeah, and like, you know, it's just a monitor. Here it is on my panel, and open it up. You'll notice previously I showed it to you. It was a very light color. Now it's dark. You'll notice I now got 8 cores. Oh, sorry, virtual cores. It's a 4-core i7. Running 8 hyper-threaded, with what have I got? 12 gig of RAM, 8 and a 4 saying, I can't remember now, 3 4s or saying, can't remember. Must say thanks to my son-in-law that gave me the 4 gig a couple of months ago. Thanks for that. And all right, so the other thing is, I mean, this you can do, for instance, on Windows itself. If you want to make a move over to Linux, but you want to fiddle first, do not install Linux and Windows together as a dual boot system. All right, there's many reasons for it. We're not going into technicalities. It's not a good idea, and you could end up losing everything, both systems. All right, and the reason for that will probably be because of a Windows 10 update. All right, that's going to rewrite all these things. So you might end up getting into big trouble. So do not do that. What I would say is, if you don't have an actual machine that you can install Linux on, you don't need a very powerful machine. You can just stick it in a virtual machine, all right? Which is what I showed you just now when I started this video with Mint. For instance, when I do my Windows development, that's running in a virtual machine with Windows 10. There's very little installed in there other than all my development stuff. So SQL Server and Visual Studio and all that sort of stuff. Obviously an antivirus. And but I do very little else on that machine. It's very nice to sit on a machine in Linux where I don't really have to care about things like viruses and so forth. I don't like my Windows running too long. You never know. There's always ways of getting this thing affected. And every time there's an update, I'm worried about what's going to happen now. I just read a website today from Forbes with a warning of Microsoft's latest update that's caused some major security issue in the File Explorer. And some other stuff, but anyway, so it's very nice being away from viruses and so forth. Now, that does not mean there are no viruses on Linux. Okay, that's not true. But we're not in Windows world. There are millions. Okay, in Linux you can count them on your left foot. Well, that's not quite true, but there are far fewer, and the way they get onto your system is not as easy as in Windows. A lot of it is because you did something yourself, as in you manually installed it without even knowing you installed the virus. So, just be a little bit careful, but you have to be even more careful in the Windows world. So if you're okay in the Windows world, you'll definitely be okay in the Linux world. On servers and so forth, I definitely do put on, I am worried about things like malware and so forth, even though it doesn't really affect the server itself. But, you know, your mail servers and that, Nextcloud, websites and so forth, you know, you do want to be able to tell your clients that, hey, this email might have a virus in it or something, and, you know, notify them of that. Even though it doesn't really affect your server or your system, it could affect theirs. So, you know, I run it anyway, antivirus, and let them know, and anti-spam stuff and so forth, and many other security tools, but that's on a server. Now, okay, so on this machine, just quickly finishing off just about the development side of stuff. On here, for instance, I've got also .NET Core and from Microsoft, and that is mainly for testing purposes. And but what I also have on here is a lot of you might know of MySQL. And then some guys broke away from MySQL, and Oracle took over MySQL, and they made MariaDB, or some of the original developers forked it and continued with MariaDB, and that's sort of what you get with Linux nowadays. And you know what they used to call the LAMP stack, where the M stood for MySQL. I still say MySQL, but it's typically MariaDB now. But with MariaDB, you can install a front end and so forth. I think it's SQL Workbench and all that sort of stuff, MySQL Workbench and HiD and so forth. You can do all that. I'm used to doing things by hand though, and so if I wanted to get, for instance, into my database administrative console, if we can call it that, I do actually drop down to the terminal. All right. And so if I just quickly, so I can log into MySQL, and it'll ask me for my admin password, because I did lock it down. All right, and I'm now in MySQL, in MariaDB, and I can see, for instance, what databases are installed. Now this is not the server, this is my local development machine. So so we can just say show tables. Sorry, show databases, because we're not in a particular database yet. Show databases, and so those are the databases I have. And then you can say I want to use a particular one, and I'll say use, let's say I'm a human, and we are now in the I'm a human database. And I can say, well, I want to do some select from some table. I don't know what tables they are, I can't remember, let's say. So I can say show show tables. Okay, those are the tables I've got, and I can say select whatever from one of those tables and so forth. But and there's a lot of things you can do in here. But this is typically how I do my. I work on the command line, just because I sort of got used to that with MariaDB and running the servers and so forth. So yes, you do have pretty graphical front ends, and like on Windows, and you know. But me personally, I'm not using any of them at the moment, and haven't for some time. Okay, so just I think I jumped a little bit there when I was saying about your virtual machine and so forth, that you shouldn't be dual booting and so forth. Rather use a virtual machine if you don't have access to an actual computer, a laptop, or whatever the case may be, where you can install whatever Linux distro you want to try many, fiddle, and then maybe just stick it in a virtual machine if you've got enough RAM. I mean, if you're running, for instance, a Linux server, then the RAM requirements are very low. The desktops require a little bit more RAM, and typically, you know, it depends what you're doing and what you're okay with. But I would say from 2 gig and up for your virtual machine, you should be fine. And you know, on average, you know, it's just, you know, it's like saying Windows 10, you know, you're okay at 4 gig, okay, but then you could argue, well, actually you're okay at 3, okay, or 2.5. Yeah, but when you start doing things, it becomes an issue. But just for fiddling around, 1.5, 2 gig is fine. So yeah, let's just think for a moment. Something else that I could show you, for instance, is okay. Well, there's, for instance, remote desktoping in the Windows world. You can use TeamViewer, all right, on Linux, which I have. I mean, if I quickly, if I just say there's TeamViewer, all right, and it'll open up in a second. Don't know why that's so slow. Nothing's running. Okay, so there's TeamViewer. Okay, and all right, you should recognize it. I did change the length of passwords just for security and various other things, but it's TeamViewer, and you can now connect to a Windows machine or a Linux machine. Anything is running TeamViewer, and it's free. And there you go. So TeamViewer runs on Linux, Windows, everywhere, Mac as well. And so yes, you instead of using normal Microsoft's remote desktop app, you can use TeamViewer. Or what I like doing on between the Linux machines, if I do want to do desktop sharing for any reason, I do sometimes when I'm, for instance, working on my laptop and on this machine, and I want to do something on both at the same time, and both of them I'm doing using the desktops. Then you want to share a screen, you can quickly just switch between them. Now I use something called No Machine, which is quite a nifty little app as well. Also free, encrypted and so forth. You can read up on that for the Linux world. And so yeah, so No Machine is your option there. Something else that I also do, just for interest sake, so we looked at System Monitor, okay, Task Manager in other words, which is, there are many different system monitors, and you get, desktop things that you can put on there and little widgets. Like I've got, for instance, monitoring, I've got 3 hard drives on the machine, 2 of them are being monitored here in the top right hand corner. But so System Monitor is good, and you can do a lot with it, and it's reminiscent of Task Manager. I like this look better, but that is just an opinion thing. It's got nothing to do with Microsoft versus Windows or anything. If this was in Windows, I would say this is lovely. But right, but something that I prefer doing though, again, remember, you don't have to do this, all right? But if you do go to the command line, all right, let's maximize the screen a bit and zoom in. Zoom in and zoom in. Yeah, okay, that's good enough. You get, in most Linux distributions, you get a command line tool called top, all right? And enter on that, and it gives you some information about what's running in your system, and all the different processes and so forth, and the memory usage, CPU usage, and so forth. A little bit detailed and so forth, but this is the default tool that's normally on your system. But you can actually get another one, which I prefer, which is called HTOP. There are other ones similar to this as well, but let's take HTOP for instance. Okay, slightly different look. Okay. And you can sort things here, and you can, for instance, say, show me only the processes related to Firefox, for instance. So you can see what's happening with only Firefox, your CPU usage, memory usage, etc. Everything. You can even kill processes from within here. I do understand this is the command line now. It's not a graphical interface like you'll be used to with Task Manager, for instance. You can right mouse click and you can end a task. But there are different ways of ending tasks and so forth, and you have those options here, for instance. So let's say I want to kill something. Let's say I want to kill, HTOP, all right? So it says down here, okay, so F9, all right? And here are the different ways of killing something, all right? And typically you'll say kill, and it just kills it, all right, it's gone. But okay, we don't want to do any of that now, so okay. But there's a lot of filtering and stuff you can do in here, but yes, so let's not play with that now. Then you have another one, which I just came across recently, for instance. Now this is just to get an overview of your computer, all right? And you can say glances, all right? And this I installed by hand from the terminal, sudo apt install glances, and then you got this, all right? And what it does is it sort of tells you if there's something going on in your computer. Like you can see towards the left here, for a moment my Core 3 was running over 80 degrees Celsius. This is an old machine, I don't have the best air cooling, and it's warm here. So yeah, but it just gives you a quick overview of your system, and it tells you about any warnings, anything you should look out for, something happens and so forth. You can also do all sorts of sorting and whatever the case may be in here. But that's a nice quick overview of everything. Just for interest's sake, showing you a little bit of the command line. All right, and all right, so we're out of the command line, and let's think for a moment. I don't know if you guys use, for instance, Telegram, but I use Telegram, and Telegram runs in Linux. Okay, and there's Telegram, and as it does in Windows and so forth, and yeah. So I don't know if I really did much justice to what I wanted to tell you guys. Maybe I rambled on a bit, but what I'm trying to show you is that it's actually very simple moving over from Windows to Linux. Oh, sorry, one thing that I must still cover is gaming. Okay, now I myself, I was an avid gamer for many years, until a couple of years ago when I was about 44, around there, and I love Battlefield 3, and this is on Windows, and I got a bit tired of Battlefield 3. You know, I got as far as I could in it. There's not much further I could really go. I had everything, all the weapons and so forth, and I heard about Battlefield 4 coming out, and I was all excited, and I looked at some YouTube videos on it, and it just looked stunning, and I pre-ordered it, and I finally got it, and I installed it, and oh, in my opinion, a complete waste. And yes, they got in a lot of trouble for it as well anyway. So it's not just my opinion, it was the opinion of many people. And then my gaming basically just stopped. I looked at Battlefield 1 after that as well, with my son playing it, and I just was not interested. And well, so I haven't played games for the last 5 years or so. But my son plays on this very machine, and in Linux, with Steam. And he loves playing Dota. He's a big Dota fan. He plays that online a lot. But he's got a whole lot of games. I've seen his stuff. He's got so many things installed, and he's figured out how to, you know, you've got ProtonDB and all these things. He's figured out all that stuff, which you can go and read on. Go to the ProtonDB website. You can see what the level of support is of the games in Linux. You can, for instance, use things like Wine. Again, you know, okay, you can do that. But all right, so you got, for instance, Steam. You got support with ProtonDB. You got the Vulkan drivers, which are extremely fast now, taking on ActiveX. In some ways, they are beating ActiveX, and or direct. Yeah, or I said ActiveX, sorry, DirectX. And see the programmer me coming out, and. But yeah, he does a lot of gaming, and my son-in-law as well, also on Linux. He's an avid gamer. He's very happy as well. There's many videos of guys out on YouTube that are playing lots of games on Linux. But no, it's the same thing. Choose what you want to do. If you're a gamer and you want to move over to Linux, and you're a gamer of today's games, you want the latest greatest. You've got a powerful computer, great graphics card, and so forth. All the latest greatest, but you're tired of paying for Windows, you want to move over to Linux because it's free. Do some research first. I won't say you should do that. It's like a guy that's really into Photoshop, and he wants to start using GIMP because he doesn't want to pay Photoshop fees anymore. So, well, first do some research, see if it'll do what you want it to do. But if you're experimenting, hey, go for it. I mean, you can't play your games in your 3D games in a virtual machine. It's not fast enough. It's quick, but it's not that quick. So yeah, and there we have it. What I can quickly maybe do is just show you like the themes. All right, if you don't like the themes that they currently got, you can go, for instance, over here, and you got, well, okay, let's first do the theme. So if we go to System Settings, all right, and okay, right up top here on the right hand side, you got themes. Okay, again, this is now on the Cinnamon desktop. Other desktops might be slightly or are slightly different. And if we click on themes, okay, it'll open the themes up for us. And let's just make that a bit bigger. Okay, so we're on themes, and you can change a few things here. You can add new themes and so forth, customize certain things, etc. Now, let's say, for instance, when you, like, let's say the desktop theme itself, all right, you'll come to the desktop down at the bottom here. I don't know if the colors are going to come up very well. They're quite dark, and you've got a whole lot of themes you can choose from. I've installed, I think, 2 or 3 or so. I can't remember how many, but I normally like Sea Black, and that's what I installed, and that is what I did customize it slightly, but that is the dark colors I have here and so forth. That's all because of that theme. But then you'll notice on the window borders, I hope you can see it, it's slightly greener, my Windows border, for instance. And to get that right, okay, instead of the desktop theme, you choose a window border, and you can go and choose your border. Which one do you want? So let's say, for instance, let's just make sure I go back to the right one. So yes, I am on the custom one that I did myself. So let's go with the one that comes with the theme. So it's a little bit darker. This is the one that'll probably come with your initial installation. So it's a white border. Okay, you might like that. But I like I downloaded this one, but I customized it myself to look like that. You don't have to, obviously that gets a bit technical when you start playing with that, but you can customize these things. But let's say you want a different theme. You can go, there are websites you can go to, okay, where you can download this stuff from. Alternatively, you can say add remove, all right, and it tells me my cache is currently out of date. So it's got a couple of themes for me already. So let's say refresh it. Takes a little moment. Okay, it's done. And here are some of the themes that I can select immediately, all right, and choose one, and you click on this little download button and it'll install it. Once it's installed, you come over to themes, all right, and you come and click on desktop and you come and select it, all right. It'll be in that list somewhere. And yeah, so that's how easy it is to do themes and so forth. But there are numerous settings you can change and so forth. So okay, I hoped I gave you Windows guys some maybe a little bit of excitement, something new to try. If you're a fiddler, there you go, you can fiddle with something new. It's not too complex. Once you get into it, it's quite simple. And like I say, once you get into it, hey, you can get your gran and your granddad onto it as well. They might be very happy with that, considering they don't ever have to pay for anything again after that. And viruses and so forth, etc. But yeah, so and for you Linux guys out there, I hope I did a good job in explaining what a typical Linux machine feels like and works like, in this case Cinnamon. And yes, there are many other ones. There's obviously Vanilla GNOME 3. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but that is up to your choice. That's what you'll get if you install the Ubuntu desktop. For interest's sake, this is something I can explain as well. Linux is basically broken up into what I like calling the granddaddy Linux systems versions. Okay, you've got Linux itself written by Linus Torvalds, okay, which is on version. I'm currently on 5.3. I think Cinnamon Linux Mint 19.3 is version 5. My servers are on different versions, and etc. But you've basically got Linux itself, so you can think of that's the kernel, and on top of that you've got a set of tools, all right, your utilities, okay, and on top of that you've got, for instance, your desktops and so forth, and inside that you've got utilities as well, which is what we'll be looking at now. So you've got these different layers, and you can go and change them. So if you, for instance, in this case with Linux Mint, they've got two versions. They've got the one which is called, Linux Mint, and then you get LMDE. Okay, Linux Mint Debian edition. Now, like I said, there were 4 granddaddies of Linux, all right, and it's Red Hat, SUSE, Debian, and Arch. Okay, now Ubuntu, okay, from Mark Shuttleworth, he went in with his team. He expanded a little bit on Debian. Okay, so Ubuntu is based on Debian, all right. And this is what Mint is running on top of, and many other Linux distributions like MX Linux and all these things. They're all running on, one of the most popular ones is to run on Ubuntu. Currently 18.04 or 19.1 or 2, I can't remember. And even that you can change. So for instance, on my laptop I'm running Arch, all right, not Ubuntu, okay, and on top of Arch I'm also running the Cinnamon desktop. So my laptop looks very similar to this, even though I'm not running an Ubuntu-based distribution. It's Arch, okay? But Cinnamon, the desktop, can run on these different distributions. And there's many offshoots of those 4. Like I said, for instance, from Debian, Ubuntu is an offshoot. And there's offshoots and offshoots. That's why they say there are thousands of distributions of Linux out there. But you stick to the main ones and everything will be fine. So, okay, sorry if I bored you guys. I did carry on a bit long. And, hey, go have fun, enjoy, and chat to you next time. See you, man. Bye-bye.